No role plays, no conference calls, no BS. Chris and Lorenzo share 4 decades of combined experience to help you become a more effective leader. This is Hacking Your Leadership.
Hey everyone, this is Chris.
And Lorenzo.
And welcome to our Best of Saturday series. Now that we have hundreds of episodes, we get a lot of listeners asking us where to start.
So we'll be selecting some of our most popular episodes to share each Saturday from our years of podcasting. We hope you enjoy it.
I want to play a 1-minute clip from a Simon Sinek video that I stumbled upon a few days ago, and then I want to get your opinion on it and share it with our audience. I think something he said in this video resonated with me and reminded me of some things that I have dealt with both as a leader and as a person reporting to leaders throughout my career. So I'm going to play this video real quick, and then I will get your opinion, okay?
Cool. Sounds good.
All right, here we go.
I was at the Pentagon, and this big general came to get me from the foyer, and we're walking down the hall to his office for the meeting, and so we're making hallway talk. And he says, "Hey, Simon, I had everyone in my office read your book." And I said, "My publisher thanks you." And he said, "Tell them not to bother. I had them read my copy." Total book sales, 1. Total impact, huge. Compared going to an event where they give out 500 free copies of my book, total book sales 500, but people use them as coasters and doorstops, total impact, 0.
All right, so what'd you think of that?
I mean, if you're asking me, like I'd rather sell the 500 books. But hey, it is what it is, right?
Right.
But no, I love the lesson there in the thinking longer and bigger term. And yes, it is, if your mission and if your vision and what you're looking to do is have impact, then that's actually what you should be measuring. So I can appreciate that.
Yeah. So what it made me think of is we discussed this briefly on an episode really close to the beginning of starting this podcast, where we were talking about when the metric becomes more important than the actual result. And I think this resonated with me a lot because in my career, I've been in many situations where it seemed like what I was being asked to do was not in the spirit of an actual result, but in the spirit of an outcome on paper that almost was the opposite of the result. And so a lot of times what the metric is, what the scorecard is, a lot of times that aligns with the actual result we're looking for from a behavior standpoint, from a customer loyalty standpoint, from a feedback standpoint. A lot of times they do line up, but sometimes they don't. And when they don't line up, I think great leaders know when to say, this doesn't line up, and so we're going to operate in spirit of what the mission of the organization is, not in spirit of what this one particular metric or scorecard is. And I'll get some clarification on it, but I'm hoping my leadership is going to align with me. And then other times, the leaders that are not so strong kind of default to, well, I know this isn't what we want in the long run, but this is what I'm going to get hounded for if I don't get a number up on this scorecard here. So, have you experienced something like that in your career?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I think that, in most, industries and places, like the results do matter. The profitability does matter. The
Of course it does.
achieving or exceeding your goals, that does matter.
Of
So
course.
like the temptation many times is, well, like if that's what you're measuring and that's going to either, get you to leave me alone or get you to, I get accolades and kudos, or like that's the thing that you say, you got to go do this to get the promotion, then I think as a leader, the temptation many times is to like go and put your hands in the mix and get it done and make sure that it's, that is executing immediately and that you're having a personal impact on the end result. And so I see that very, very often. And you know what? Sometimes, like in full transparency, sometimes you have to as a leader. Like that's actually what the organization is paying you to go do, is make sure that this thing is finding success or that this thing is growing or that you're exceeding this goal that you've been given. I think from a leadership capacity, though, where that becomes dangerous is that if you're spending your time doing that thing over and over again, then I think that you're probably not spending the time in the right place of developing your people, and that's not allowing you to do the work that only you can do as a leader. And not only is it shortchanging people's development, but it's not allowing you as a leader to break off and find yourself, doing other things, taking on additional responsibilities, having an opportunity to, to invest your time in a different way that can really build for the long term, because you're constantly putting your finger in the hole of the dam that might be leaking from time to time when the result's not there.
Right, right. So what I'm talking more about though is when a person is expected to focus on whatever the number looks like on paper versus what it actually means in real life. And I'll give you a very high level example that any business owner will be able to relate to. Whatever product you're selling, if you all of a sudden cut your prices down 99%, your revenue would probably skyrocket, and you probably move through all of your items very, very quickly because you are giving tremendous discounts on the product. So your top line revenue might be amazing, but your profit margins are going to be terrible and you'll go out of business. On the flip side, you could choose to raise all your prices 300%, and your profit margins on the ones you do happen to sell will be fantastic, but you'll move a lot less of them, so you don't have any top line. So when a company says, okay, the focus is on the top line revenue, get as much revenue into the cash register as possible, there are a lot of leaders out there that say, oh, well, if that's all that matters, let's just start cutting prices, and then we'll make sure that top line revenue happens. And if the result, or if the direction from up above comes down as, well, no, it's all about profit margin right now. We're having a tight quarter, a tight month, a tight whatever, and it's all about profit margins. Like, all right, we're not going to discount anything. We're not going to price match, nothing. It's all about the margin. We know our top line revenue is going to plummet because we're not price matching, we're not taking deals, we're not negotiating with customers, none of that stuff. But I promise, the very few deals we move, they're going to be at high profit margins, And so you can't say that one is more important than the other. They're both equally important. But one could be more important than the other this month or this quarter or whatever. But when you put your employees in a situation like that, are you asking them to choose the wrong thing? Are you teaching them bad behaviors because what you're asking for is for them to affect a number on a scorecard versus focusing on the behaviors they'll be able to take with them regardless of what the scorecard focus is?
Yeah, no, it's a great point, because I think, right, to what he's saying in the video and to what you're talking about right now, like, are you trying to build customer loyalty and a great experience and a reason to come to your organization or buy from you? Like, is that the long-term impact you're looking to have?
Well, that's the word to use, is impact. Is it impact?
Right, exactly. Right. It's an impact. Or are you short-terming it by just like pulling the lever or chasing the thing? And if it's not a great experience, oh, well, like, I got to win this month or I got to win this week. And
Right.
There are times in business where you've got to make decisions to fund the business and potentially, make a profit. That's what pays people to work there.
Always.
But to what you're saying is that if you're not committed to the long term of understanding what you're actually trying to accomplish, it can be very easy to fall into those traps. It can be very easy to jump into those temptations of a short term win. But really, cut your legs out from underneath yourself, because, by not providing a consistent, great experience, by not, taking care of the people that purchase from you and building loyalty, at the end of the day, you're just going to have a smaller and smaller pool of people that are purchasing, and eventually it's going to dry up because you've lost the focus on what the longer, bigger picture is. And I see that happen. I see that it mostly happens when you have people that, maybe somewhat blinded by career aspiration, especially leaders. Like I want to move up. I want to impress my boss. I want to attach my name to something. I want to go out there and be able to say, look at what I did with this. And so they go and they push, and they shove, and they figure out a way to win in the category. And what they've missed is that, well, by making that such a large, urgent priority, you've now shifted the focus of what your team is doing to just go chase that one thing instead of thinking about the bigger picture of winning collectively and building a culture and an environment where people understand that there will be some priority shifts from time to time, but at the end of the day, we're here to do our absolute best to create experiences. Like that's where I see it happen the most, is usually when people are chasing the next job or their career and not thinking about building a sustainable culture over time.
Right. So when I see it is when leaders don't want to lead in as hands-on a way, and they don't want to take the time to look at the causes of why something is a certain way, and they just want to focus on whatever that scorecard or that metric is. And so if you look at that Simon Sinek video and the goal was just book sales, well then clearly the 500 is, that one matters more. But if you look at what the long-term one was, obviously the more people he's impacting is the multiple people who shared the book, but they all actually read it. And so from the same token, if a leader doesn't want to get their hands dirty and they don't want to go into where their people actually work and try to do the work with them and learn about what causes certain things to happen a certain way, there can be this temptation to add things to a scorecard to look at that you think are telling you what your results are, but they're not really telling you what the results are. It's an incomplete picture. So I'll give you a good example of this. I remember working for an organization where the big focus for a particular quarter was how many transactions were closed versus how many people walked into the building. Because if they're coming there, you have to assume they want to come to buy something. And so if they're leaving without buying something, well, why is that? Well, they didn't. Some people are looking around. That's true. So you're not going to close everybody. But if the people are leaving because it's not in stock, or because no one reached out to help them, or because the person they did ask for help didn't treat them correctly, there are a lot of reasons why a person would leave without buying something. And we have to try to cut down on those reasons, obviously. That's a very noble cause to do. You want to make sure you're alleviating those things and cutting down on those things. But if your only evidence of that being right or wrong in the big picture is what percentage of people buy versus don't buy, that's an incomplete picture. And so let me tell you what leaders that I've seen in this business do is for 2 or 3 hours a day, the sensors that detect how many people come in the store just magically break. They just stop working apparently. Mm-hmm. And after 2 or 3 hours, they get turned back on again and they start working again. And magically, lo and behold, by the end of the day, wow, your close rate is up. Well, you didn't really do anything besides turn off the thing. Now, if you get left alone because of that, if your leader comes in and says, great job, you increased close rate, and doesn't ask you why or try to figure out why, what's going on, well, clearly what that person is focused on is making sure that they get left alone by whoever their boss is, and they just want to move that number on that scorecard. But a good leader will go in and say, what are the behaviors you're doing to change this? What are the behaviors doing to make this better? And to validate those as either something that matches with the brand and the mission and the values of the organization, or ones that don't. And so when a leader focuses on the wrong thing, I think it drives their people to focus on the wrong thing. Because if the leader's focus is only on whatever that scorecard is, their people will understand that. You can read between the lines and think, okay, is this person really wanting me to change behaviors of my people? Or does this person just want this number to go up on the scorecard? And I've worked in situations where leaders want the former and the latter. The latter is way easier to do, but it's not sustainable.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're thinking about building culture and doing it that way, you've got to create an environment where people feel good, not just about the results that they're driving, but the way in which they're doing it and the work that they're doing collectively together. So like I completely agree that like it's not sustainable, and it's not aligned with, again, the larger, whether it's a vision or mission or whatever you're looking to accomplish. Like the minute that you prioritize those other things above the really, really big picture, I think is when you can run into those problems.
Yeah, I think it also loses you credibility as a leader in the eyes of your people, who they know what's going on. They know when you do things to make it easier to meet that metric without actually focusing on what the behaviors are. They can see what you're doing. And at the moment they get the impression that what you care about is not the experience of the employee, the experience of the customer, but rather this number on the scorecard, even at the expense. Now remember, keep in mind, sometimes they align. Sometimes when you take care of the employees and you take care of the customers, you do take care of the scorecard too. That's great when that happens. But if the leader is showing that they are willing to hurt the experience of the employee and the customer in order to make that scorecard better, I think that's something that is really hard to come back from. I've seen leaders do that, and then when they get called out from above by somebody who says you can't do it that way, now they go to start changing behaviors and they've lost credibility. Their people don't trust them anymore because they see what that leader is capable of doing when push comes to shove, and they don't have any credibility as a person of integrity.
Yeah, no, it's funny. There's been leaders in my past, and I think, people that have made those types of decisions to kind of, quote unquote, work the system or figure out how to pull these levers or go chase that one thing. And I think to your example around close rate, like I remember very specifically, a time where somebody was trying to win in like units per transaction, how many things people ring up. And I think that's a term you hear a lot in things like soft lines and stuff where like, hey, you bought a pair of pants. Well, do you also buy a t-shirt and a pair of socks and something else to go along with it? And so they use the terminology of units per transaction quite often. And I remember somebody, basically handing out free sodas and snacks to customers and saying like, no, like, hey, it's on me. Thank you for shopping here. It's all good. We'll go ahead and take care of that. And then when you get to the register, they just change the price to zero. Because when you look at units per transaction, you're not actually looking at any type of a payment or money.
Yeah.
It's just how many things are on the receipt. So even if I give you a free drink or a free candy bar, technically that's a unit on a receipt. And so like it's...
And because these are like dollar items, they don't really hurt the margin much. It's like it gets overlooked.
Right. So like you're technically losing money.
Right.
You're kind of pumping this type of scorecard. And your people can see that because then when somebody walks in and wants to celebrate, oh my gosh, you guys have increased your units per transaction by one full unit. They're like, yeah, well, it's because we're giving away free candy. Like,
right.
It's not you lose, to your point, you lose all credibility in that space if people know that you're working a scorecard or you're cheating.
I completely agree. And with that, it brings us to this episode's 1 minute hack.
The 1 minute hack.
Okay, so for this episode's 1 minute hack, here's what I'd like for you to do. I want you to be really conscious of times when you have a leader who asks you to change a metric but not a behavior. And so what I mean by that is when you're given direction and somebody is saying things like, look, this needs to get better. And they don't follow that up with, and here's how to do it, or here's the behavior. It's just simply a number. It's simply a metric. I want you to question it and seek more context. I think it's really important when you're looking to build a culture and an environment where you have trust and you can go to your people and ask them to get better at something, ask them for more engagement or to build skill in getting the result that's necessary to drive your business, that you are really clear on exactly why that's happening, on how it ties to the bigger picture, and that you've got all the context from your direct leader who's asking you to go do these things and what needs to happen from a behavioral standpoint. You really have to drill down into the behavioral pieces to make sure that when you go and ask for the change, that people can understand not just why it's being changed and why this is a priority that needs to happen, but what specifically are you asking them to change about how they approach the work?
Yeah, I think it's a great 1 minute hack. And I think as leaders, we need to keep in mind that a meaningful, lasting change that isn't a flavor of the week, but rather something that you want to keep going, that doesn't happen in a week or 2 weeks. Behavioral changes that impact long-term take time because they take training and they take going through exercises with your employees. They take making sure that your employees are bought into it to begin with and then role-playing things with them, doing different things that will help them get through this and make sure that they can execute on wherever they are. And those things take time. If your leader is looking for the quick fix, then they will expect that a lot faster. If they're looking for something that is lasting, then they should understand that this is about behaviors. And if you're a leader in the same situation, you need to understand this is about behavior.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode